Hi, welcome to Storytime with Scout. This is the very first episode of Storytime with Scout. I'm hoping that a whole bunch of people, maybe if you saw some of my other really crummy videos, maybe 12 of you will watch this and click like. Maybe one of you will. Maybe a million will, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Let's see, Storytime with Scout, historically, the way it started was I was working at a major bank, one of the 5 largest banks in the United States. I'm retired now, but and I worked in information security, and I started this Friday afternoon thing called Storytime with Scout. Scout is my nickname. And basically we started at, like, I think it was at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoons. We would do Storytime with Scout, and I think it was like 3 guys that I worked with would kind of pull their chairs over, and we would sit around. We all worked in cubicles, so we would sit around and we would and I would tell a story. And they're all true stories. Sometimes it's hard for me to believe that my life has so many odd true stories in it, but it does. And it grew, then there were three guys, and then there were 4, and then there were 5, and then my manager came over, and I think then there were 6. And and eventually we had to move to the auditorium, and I had to go up on the stage because there were so many dozens of people. All right, I just made that up. That's not true. We never moved to the auditorium. We managed to crowd the dozens of people around in the okay, I'm lying again. There were like 6 people. That's why if I get 12 likes on this, it would be pretty amazing. So anyway, and then I retired a couple years ago, and my friend Kevin, who I mentioned in one of my practice videos, he suggested I should do like a video thing of Storytime with Scout, and I decided that I would do it. So the question is, what do I put up here? Because most of the stories are all true. Many were about my family, which was a very unusual family, as are all families, I guess, or about people that I've worked with. So I have to be very careful what I say, because they're all true, but people don't necessarily want the truth known about them. So I'm going to tell about a job prior to working at the 5th largest bank, which will remain unnamed. It wasn't the 5th largest bank, I don't think. 4th largest? 3rd largest. But you don't know what bank it is, so we won't embarrass them, because we don't want them embarrassed when I go past the stagecoach in the lobby. Oops. All right. Anyway, before I worked there, I worked at a number of other places, all of which were dysfunctional. I realized that all families and all employment scenarios tend towards dysfunctionality. I think it's like one of the laws of thermodynamics that talks about what's called entropy, that everything tends towards entropy, which is tending towards disorganization, and I think that's what's happening. But anyway, so I was managing the network and security at an agency in Minnesota. I am in the Northwoods of Minnesota, and I still smoke, and it's politically incorrect, but I don't much care. So this guy who worked for me, let's see, where should I start? He was a really funny guy. I haven't seen him in years. I still like him, and he was very, very good at what he did. He was a network guy. And but I remember I gave him his first cell phone ever. He lived in a small town south of Minneapolis, and he would commute up to Minneapolis, 30 miles or so. And he didn't have a cell phone, and so I gave him one that belonged to the agency, so that he could be on call. It's not like it was a big favor, it just meant that when he was out partying, I could call him and say, I need help, or the network's down and I'm partying, so you have to go fix it or something. But anyway, I gave him the cell phone, and he took the cell phone home, and he wanted to test it out. I gave it to him, I think it was a Friday, and I gave it to, he gave it to his wife. He was coming up to the cities, that's what we call Minneapolis and St. Paul, the cities. He was coming up to the cities. If you've seen Fargo, you know about the cities. But she was coming up, and so he gave her the cell phone to take with her and take with to shopping. And so she took it shopping, and he called her about 10 times, and she didn't answer. And when she got home, she set her purse on the kitchen table, and she set her stuff on the kitchen table, and she he said, I called you, several times, and you didn't answer. And she said, well, and the phone never rang. And he said, well, that's weird, because I called you a bunch of times. And so he went over to his home phone, and he dialed the cell phone number, and it started ringing in her purse on the table. And she said, there's that noise again. She said, what's that noise? I've been hearing that while I was shopping. So it was the phone ringing, and she didn't even know, God bless her, she was such an innocent. They were both, he told me one day, this is just an intro to the Storytime with Scott. He told me one day he was going to be late the next morning because he had a doctor's appointment. Well, I was his manager, and I couldn't really say what's wrong. I mean, he worked for me for a while, and I liked him a lot. I was concerned. But I didn't say why. So the next day, he came in about 10 in the morning. He usually came in at like 6. And we went down to the smoking room. That was in an age when they had at least smoking rooms in the basement. You used to be able to smoke everywhere except elevators. Can you believe that? To this day, the old buildings still have ashtrays outside the elevators. And so he came in, and we went down to have a cigarette, and I just kind of said, everything go okay at the doctor? And he said, well, it was the strangest thing. He said, I went to the doctor, I went in, and he said, how you doing? And I said, good. How are you? And he said, good. And he paused, and he said, well, what can I do for you? What's wrong? And the guy who worked for me said, well, don't you know? And the doctor said, no, I don't know. Don't you know? And he said, no, I don't. My wife made the appointment for me. She just told me I was supposed to come. So he said, well, I don't know what's wrong with you. You don't have any complaints? And he said, no. So that was the end of the appointment. I don't know. He was really good at his job, but what makes a person go to the doctor just because their wife makes an appointment without ever asking why they were going to the doctor? It's such an odd thing. I think this is going to be a really short story time with Scout, because I'm a little nervous because I have a vast audience out there on the internet. So I kind of got to get the hang of how to do this. I worked at the University of Minnesota too. I have some good stories about that. Some strange people there. There's strange people everywhere, except at the major bank that I worked at, where everybody was perfect, including management. Just in case they watch. So I think that's it for tonight with Storytime with Scout. And I could give you a tour of my desk, but you got that. And I alluded to Silverlight, which is a plug-in for Internet Explorer, and most people are probably lost. Why I say these things, I don't know. I don't. But I'm kind of a crazy old man. It shouldn't be Storytime with Scott. It should be Storytime with a crazy old man. And see, I'm smoking like in your living room or in your office or your family room or your bedroom, wherever it is you're watching this. I'm in there smoking. Kind of gives me a good feeling to be able to do that. It'll probably kill me. I'm not a proponent of smoking. Smoking is an inexcusable habit, and there is no defense for it. But yet I do it. And if you saw my other video, I did cut my hair, cut it myself, so it doesn't look very good, I'm sure. and I kind of was growing a beard at that time. That video was back in March, my music video, but uh, but um, but I was kind of growing a beard. But then I shaved it off. So about a month ago, I started growing a beard again. So now I have short hair, and I'm starting to look like Santa Claus, maybe, or something. But anyway, God bless you. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful morning or afternoon or evening or whenever you're watching this. And I hope that God holds you in His hands and keeps you safe.